Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 116th installment in the Torah portion of the week. We're holding by Parshas Mishpatim. Parshas Mishpatim comes after the giving of the Torah and goes through the majority of civil law, laws of damages that make up the three major tractates of Talmud, Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Basra. Basically all about the laws of damages. So the Torah says, chapter 23, verse 2, says, "Don't be a follower of the majority for evil. Do not respond to a grievance by yielding to the majority to pervert the law." Right? So you're not allowed to go after the majority for evil, but if there's a rabbinical court, let's say of 3, you go according to the majority for good, right? 2 verses 1, right? You go after the majority, but you don't go according to the majority for evil. So says the Torah. Says Mori Verebi, Harav Agon Ramosh Star Moshlita, should be well. He brings down in Chochmah V'das, he brings down over here that there's a story of a certain king that asked Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz. Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz lived more than 100 years ago, one of the great rabbis of the generation, and this king asked him the following question. Right? He asked him the following question. B'Torah shalachem, in your Torah it says, Acharim Rabim Lahatos. It says you have to go according to the majority. Right? But the majority of the world doesn't hold like the Jews. Right? When it comes to belief in God, in these laws, etc. So if the Torah says you have to go according to the majority, how come you Jews don't go according to the majority? So he says, so Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz answered, he said that the law of Rov, of going according to the majority, it's only when you have a suffix. It's only when you have a doubt. Right? So then, if you have a doubt, let's say you have 3 pieces of meat, you have a doubt, 2 are kosher, 1 is not, then you go after the majority. Right? But again, it's only when you have a doubt. But by us, he says, there is no doubt that the Torah is 100% true. It has nothing to do with going after the majority or not. So we're gonna flush this out a little bit, but I just want to continue. And he says, I heard a similar thing. He says it happened in a certain city of people that worked, Bali Batim as they're known, people who worked, and they got together for a gathering, and they decided to ask the rabbi of the city the following question. Why is it that he himself is in charge of the city? Right? In charge of the Judaism of the city. Meaning he's the rabbi of the synagogue, he is the rabbi of the school, he's in charge of the school, he's in charge of who's allowed to do ritual slaughter, etc. So they wanted to know, why don't you go after the Rov? Why don't you go after the majority? Us, right? We are the majority. You're not the majority. So why don't you go like us? We don't even have a say. We should at least have a say. So the Rav answered them, a person has 248 limbs. Right? Now, would you ever think that one of the limbs would say to the brain, what are you doing being in charge? Why should you be in charge? We have many more limbs than you. You're only one aspect of the body. What gives you the right to be in charge? So if you think about it, it's kind of a stupid thing to say. Because it's the nature of a person that all the faculties for making decisions are going to be placed in the brain. Even if the brain is smaller than any other part of the body. So too, the Rav said, when it comes to religion of the city, when it comes to Judaism in the city, it's given over to the rabbi and the rabbinic scholars in order for them to be in charge. And therefore, you don't go according to the majority. Right? You're not going to go according to the majority. Now, so you might ask, You might ask, so, okay, the rabbi's in charge, right? He's the biggest rabbinic scholar. And he's the one that makes the decisions for the spiritual things in the city. Right? So they're asking, so why don't you go according to us? Right? So he answered, when it comes to religion, right, when it comes to Judaism, city's placed in my hands. Right? They made him the rabbi of the city. It's placed in his hands in order to establish schools and, for him to be in charge of the schools, to oversee them, to be in charge of ritual slaughter and who's gonna be a ritual slaughter and all that. So let's flush this out. Let's flush this out a little bit. When we think about the majority, and we think about the Jewish world that we live in, the Reform and Conservative can say the same thing. They say we're the majority. The Orthodox are less than 10%. Right, give or take. Right? They're, whatever. Let's say they're 10%. You're only 10%. Right? They have to go according to us. The problem is, if you go according to what they say, right? Forget about assimilation, intermarriage, and all that. It just proves that they're wrong. But if you go according to what they say, then you're going to uproot the Torah. You're going to take things out of the Torah that, are fundamental. So when the Torah says you don't go, you go after the majority, right? It's not for evil. Is he going to say these people are evil? They rebel against God. They don't believe in God. Doesn't matter if they know anything, they don't know anything. It's considered a rebellion, right? We've spoken about this many times. I'm not going to rehash it. But the point is that even if they're the majority now, 60, 70% into marriage, they're not going to be the majority in the future. Right? For sure they're not going to be a majority in the future because they're going to be wiped off the face of the map. So I had somebody once tell me, why do you say you're the majority and you're going to be the majority, meaning the Orthodox? We have a synagogue, 2,000 families. I said, very nice. I said, but the 2,000 families, how many of them are like you? This guy was intermarried. Right, so I said, how many people like you? 30%? 40%? Tell me if I'm getting warm. 50%? So he goes, all right, what's your point? My point is, it's a very high number. That the majority of people are like you. If you're intermarried, married to a non-Jew, we hold, your kids aren't Jewish. So in the next generation, you're not going to have anybody left. 60, 70% intermarriage rate. Even if I would agree, you have to change the Torah and do what you want or whatever, it doesn't work. Right? Practically speaking, it's a non-starter. So going after the majority can only be done under the parameters of what the Torah tells us. Going after the majority if I have a doubt. Right? 3 pieces of meat. Now I have to figure out, am I allowed to rely on this or not? Am I allowed to rely on the majority? Because the problem is I don't know for sure which one is treif, which one is in kosher. But I know the majority is. So in something like that, where there's a doubt, I can go according to the majority. If there's a way to figure out the metzias, to verify and make it clear, as possible, better to do that than rely on the majority. But the Torah tells you a general rule. When it comes to majority, you're allowed to rely on it if it's for good. If it's something there's a doubt. But here the Torah says you're not allowed to go after evil. You're not allowed to rely on the majority for evil. That's bad. Now again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many Reform and Conservative Jews out there. It doesn't matter. They'll claim, well, we're the majority. But the difference is they're going to die out. right? They're intermarrying. They keep very few mitzvahs. You can't pass that down to the next generation. That's a proven fact, right? This is not, we're just making this up. This is what the statistics tell us. So therefore, they want to say, go according to us. We're the majority. Well, the majority, again, you can only go according to the majority when it comes to something that there's a doubt. Right? Also, there's another story, right? The famous story with the Baal Tanya, with Rav Shlomo Zalman of Liad, first Lubavitcher Rebbe. Someone came up to him again with the following claim. They said, your Torah says you have to go after the majority. So we're the majority. How come you don't go after us? So the Baal Tanya said the same thing. He said it's only when you have a doubt. We don't have a doubt that the Torah is true. Right? We have absolutely zero doubt. So therefore, what you said doesn't apply. Now, regardless of whether the majority follow it or not, that's not a criteria that is not true. Right? It's just there have been a lot of things that have gone on, in history, over the last 150 years that have caused, or the last 200 years, that have caused the Jews to totally go astray. Right? 90%. So, you might say, well, if the Torah was true, wouldn't everybody be keeping it? Well, we all have free will. The Christians believe 100% they're right. And you got the masses, the vast majority, people in the world are Christian. Right? Maybe the Muslims are going to catch them, but the vast majority are Christian. If the vast majority of Christians say, well, you see, it works. They're the majority. And you see, they pass it down. But when you look at it and you break it down, how many of them really understand what it's all about? How many of them really question? Most people I deal with in my conversion classes are people who have come out of Christianity. People who have questioned. Are you allowed to question in the church? No, you have to have faith, right? Got to have faith. You got to have faith. You're not allowed to question because if you question, it doesn't make any sense, right? And they're not going to have answers. So most of the people I've dealt with, because they ask questions, they said you have to have faith. And if they kept asking questions, then they got thrown out of the church. Right? Eventually, they either got thrown out of the church or they left because they saw that it didn't make sense. So again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they claim, we're the majority and we're right. Most of the people, most of the masses of Christians, they don't know anything about their religion. Zero. And the ones that start looking into it and start really thinking and not believing on blind faith, they're the ones that leave it. Right? And there are people coming out in droves today exactly because of that. Because there's just so much information out there and they're questioning. Right? Judaism loves questions. People think, oh, you guys are closed-minded. Obviously never been in a yeshiva. Never seen how, study partners learn. Right? So the idea, the idea that we believe it's true, right? We have evidence. We have evidence that it's true. Right? But going after the majority is only if there's a doubt. By us, we believe 100%. There is no doubt. Right? It's clear as day. 90%, you'll say, the greatest living proof that it can't be true is that there aren't too many people that follow it the way it should be. Right? Like the Orthodox, they're only 10%. You're right? They're only 10%. But the other 90% that don't follow the Torah, what's it based on? Is it based on looking into the subject? Is it based on trying to understand if it's true or not? Or is it about being complacent, doing a little bit and that's it? I mean, if you read the Torah from cover to cover, that's not what it's about. God gave it, we do it. Right? God spoke to Moshe, passed it down. There's an oral tradition to show what it means because the Torah is very vague. So that being true, so people have gone by the wayside. They've thrown their heritage overboard, not because they understand it, not because they've looked into it, they've read philosophy books, etc. They'd questions they couldn't get answered. It wasn't about that. Vast majority of people today leave in the folder based on one thing. one thing that's called taiva. It's called desire. Learning is hard. Right? Sitting down, trying to figure out what's going on, what the text says, early commentators, later commentators, and doing it for hours on end, it's hard. And there are a lot of people that find it difficult. They're not successful. Okay, does that give them the right to throw it off? No. Right? But this generation is all about instant gratification. This generation is all about having a handheld device and having fun. Right? It's not about, it's not about philosophy today. Right? We're not talking about the great philosophers of this generation that, look into all philosophy and prove that the Torah is not true. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with that whatsoever. It has to do with the fact that, people have desires. And people don't want to work so hard. And we're living in an extremely lazy generation. You look at all the mechanical advantage, all the electronic advantage that we have. It used to be washing clothes was a whole day affair. Get it? It was a whole day affair. You had to go down to the river. It was hard work. It was hard labor. Today it's very easy. Stick in the washing machine, put in a little soap. That's it. Does it by itself. So there are plenty of things that work much quicker, and that we have a lot more free time. So the question is, what do we do with that free time? People say, listen, I have family, I have kids, this, that, work. True. It's very true. But if a person thought for a split second how much time is wasted either on a computer or a handheld device, it has nothing to do with work or anything else. It's just a, chill time, to relax, to have fun. I think a person would be very surprised how many hours during the week is wasted. No, I don't have time to learn. I'm so busy. I got this, I got that, I got the other thing. If a person would chalk up all the hours, all the minutes, the time that they wasted, on either on a computer or on a handheld device, I think they'd be very surprised. I think we have a lot more time than we actually think. It's just that, to find a few minutes, to learn, to listen to a class, something like that doesn't sound so, so exciting as watching a video, right? Or watching a sporting event or whatever, right? That's a lot more interesting. So it's not based on philosophical questions, by the vast majority. And again, the reason's very simple, because people aren't thinking. They'll say, why do bad things happen to good people? They'll throw that out as a block. Really, you break down the question and say, why did my grandfather suffer and die? I'm not saying it's not a legitimate question, but it's not the question. In other words, not something that just, the person says, well, I'm not even going to look into it because the Torah is cruel. The Torah doesn't make sense and all that. It doesn't make sense because you never looked into it. You never learned it. There are plenty of things that if you look into it, some make more sense than others, but we have answers why we do things. Most people don't want to do it or keep it because they don't want to be inconvenienced. Right? Inconvenience is a 4-letter word in this generation. You can do what you do, just don't inconvenience me. And if I'm going to be inconvenienced, I'm not going to do it. I want to be able to do what I want to do. That's not philosophical conviction. That's desire. Right? And desire will kill a person. Because it'll justify, the evil inclination will justify the drop of a hat what you should be doing. And why you shouldn't be doing, what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. A person had a choice, sit and learn for 2 hours, break your head, right, figure out what's going on in this text and this and that, or sit back, relax, sip a pina colada, watch the Super Bowl. What are you going to choose? I mean, I would think that it's pretty obvious. People equate, with learning being boring. Right? It doesn't always have to be boring. Some things are more exciting, some things less exciting. But at the end of the day, we're putting our best foot forward to be close to God, because isn't that why He set up the world? Isn't that why He put us here? Everyone's created b'tselem Elokim. Everyone has a spark of God in them. So if we have that spark, shouldn't we use it? Whether a non-Jew converts, doesn't convert, he's got plenty more to do even as a non-Jew. Shouldn't we all be trying to draw closer to God, do what He wants, learn His wisdom? I mean, that's what the Torah seems to say. Seems to say pretty clear. The fact that people don't, again, is not proof that the Torah is wrong. There could be a number of reasons why people, don't want to keep what they have to do. It's hard, right? It's a change of lifestyle. True. It's commitment. True. It's not touchy-feely. I feel like doing it if I don't feel like doing it. It's either the Torah is true or it's not. But we don't have any doubts. The Torah by us is clear. People just think they already know what the Torah is. They say, oh, I've experienced Shabbos. I've experienced this. It's not for me. Let's break it down. Is it a philosophical issue? No. Most likely it's not a philosophical issue. I could never do this. Not a question you can't. You would never do it. You can't see yourself doing it. Does that make it not true? Does it make it not true? If you're going to argue from a philosophical standpoint, you got to prove why it's not true. Not just because I'm not going to do it because it doesn't fit my world outlook. Well, who says your world outlook is right? Who says in your puny little brain you think you understand what the world is? You're going to say, but I don't have to keep the Torah. I have free choice. You're right, 100%. You have free choice. But when you say you have free choice, does that mean you looked into the other side? Or you just say, well, I don't believe in animal sacrifice. I don't have to keep the Torah. Do you understand what animal sacrifice is? You understand why it was done? You understand what the purpose of it was? You say it's cruel to animals. Well, if you looked at Judaism's position, Judaism holds we can use animals for whatever we want, as long as we don't abuse them. Can we use them for scientific experimentation to find cures for diseases? Yes. Isn't that cruel? According to Judaism, it's not cruel because you're allowed to use them for your benefit. That's called your benefit. It's the benefit of mankind. You may think it's wrong to use animals for that. What else are you going to use? How is he going to see if these drugs work, don't work? Right? Use them on animals. Again, you could say that's cruel. Say what you want. But they found cures doing this. Been proven scientifically. So again, we can have certain world outlooks, but who says our world outlook is true? What's our world outlook based on? Secular knowledge? What the newspapers tell us? What people say over the internet? What makes anything true? Got to evaluate the evidence. So since I'm recording this, I'll go online to say, I'll say people aren't interested whether it's true or not. Shocking. They're not intellectually honest. They just don't want to be told what to do. They want to take a little bit of it. They want to be the cultural Jew. And that's having a little bit of flavor of Judaism. If I want to do more, I will. If I don't, I won't. And not whether there's a God in the world and He gave us the Torah or not. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, does it fit in my world outlook or not? Is it going to inconvenience me? So if you take 100 people, 100 secular Jews, and ask them about the Torah being true or not, they'll say, it can't be true because of this or because of that. It's not really thought out. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is they don't want to be inconvenienced. And that is not one of the top 10 reasons why a person leaves Judaism or has nothing to do with it. Right? Or Sorry, that's not one of the top 10 reasons you're going to argue in a philosophical debate. Whether Judaism is true or not. It's a cop-out. So why do people use it? So they don't have to do anything. They can just say, fine, that's your belief. That's what you think. I think differently. I'm more open-minded. I'm this, I'm that. But at the end of the day, it's not about philosophical belief. It's about what I think, what I want to do. So to me, that's my philosophical belief. So a person, going to go out on a limb here, person doesn't have the right to say, I think this and I think that, if they haven't looked into the subject. I would think, logically speaking, if someone can barely read Hebrew, and all the vast majority of rabbinic texts are in Hebrew, how can they argue about anything? Their knowledge is not based in Torah. Right? Their knowledge is secular. So based on their secular ideas, they'll say that Torah is this, that, and the other thing. And they'll be adamant that that's true. So you ask them, what about oral tradition? They'll say they're men like anyone else. I can disagree. I can say that's not what it means. They came up with 39 categories, that are forbidden on Shabbos. Doesn't say that anywhere in the Torah. So I can have my opinion also. Right? So then you start running into problems of what the parameters of Torah are. So we've said many times, you want to argue philosophically? Let's argue philosophically. Did God give the Torah? Didn't he give the Torah? Was it a big game of telephone? Is it true or is it not true? Right? Those terms we can argue. Person's own personal beliefs in what they think when it's not based on Torah will ask, is that valid? Is that a valid way of arguing? If someone doesn't really know anything about the subject, how can they be authority on it? Right? How can they say, I think this and this is true? Person has a second grade education, we call that chutzpah. It's like, person got a second grade education trying to say that, all mathematics and is proven, proven theorems are wrong. Why? Because I don't like it, they're too long. It should be a lot shorter. So someone who's not well versed in it, you're gonna listen to their argument? Of course you're not gonna listen to their argument. You're not even gonna give them lip service. Because they're talking out of their elbow. They have no idea what they're talking about. But the problem is it's a very volatile, very emotional issue, because people will say, well, if I don't believe like you, we're not Jewish. Well, it's not true. We don't believe you're not Jewish. Depends what you do. Person doesn't keep Shabbos in public. Got a status of a non-Jew. Yeah. Doesn't mean you're not a Jew. You have certain things. You lose your status as a Jew. Not totally. Can always repent. Can always do tshuva. But you don't even think I'm Jewish. If you don't keep Shabbos in public, meaning that you desecrate Shabbos in public, that means it's like you deny God. If you deny God, it's like you deny the entire Torah. You're not whistling Dixie over. You're not smelling too good. Right? This is not something I made up. Right? Many sources bring this out. If they don't hold of these sources, fine. But at the end of the day, you deny God. So what's the status? Someone who denies God is a Jew. But I want to believe it, any way I want. Okay. But realize there will be ramifications. Realize if you think certain things or do certain things, you may lose your status as a Jew unless you repent and change. Right? You ask any Jew out there, give an example. You ask any Jew out there, is it permitted to marry a non-Jew? Yes or no? According to the Torah. They'll give you 100 excuses. No, it's not really what it meant. Yes or no? Does the Torah say you're allowed to marry a non-Jew or not? Torah says many, many times don't do it. But then people say, no, it's only for that generation. It only meant for the people, getting rid of the non-Jews in the land of Israel, and they wiped them out. They'll come up with any number of excuses. I'm not interested in excuses. Most people know that. Tell me, is it true or it's not? You allowed to marry or not? Don't give me excuses why you think it's permissible. Tell me what the Torah says. Any language you want. No commentary. We'll be Karaites for a second. No commentary. When the Torah says more than half a dozen times, do not intermarry, what do you think they meant? You think they were kidding? It only meant for you, not for anyone else. What did it mean? Because someone recently asked me, a verse in Deuteronomy says don't give over your sons to non-Jewish women and vice versa. So someone said, well, does that mean I can't marry a Jew? Yeah. If you're a non-Jew, it means you can't marry a Jew unless you want to convert. And you're converting because you believe the Torah is true. So I said very simply, we want Judaism to continue. If intermarriage goes haywire, Judaism ain't going to continue. Judaism will die. Right? If you didn't have the Orthodox, Judaism 100% would be dead. Wouldn't exist. I mean, it would exist, or let's say better. Some form of it, obviously not the authentic one. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. And they'll call it Judaism. Is that Judaism? No. Looks like it, maybe smells like it a little bit. It's a cheap imitation. You can say, see, you're fanatical and you're saying we're not Jews. So, again, let's go back to the original point. The original point is, do I believe the Torah is true or not? So you say, well, it depends on your definition. I'm not interested in everyone's definition. I want to know what the Torah says. I want to know what the Torah means when it says it. The Reform movement probably has more non-Jews in it than Jews. The conservative movement gave up, and they said at least now, if there's a non-Jewish spouse, you don't have to convert. They've given up. At least by Reform, at least they want some sort of conversion. But at the end of the day, let's get it back to the premise. God gave the Torah or He didn't give it? If He did give it, what does it mean? And show through the text. Forget the commentaries. Show through the text what it means. What am I obligated in? What am I exempt in? And then you have to have a litmus test. The litmus test is, do what whatever I believe in, whatever the movement believes in, does it work? You can believe in philosophy and mumbo jumbo, whatever you want. If it doesn't work, you can't pass it down, regardless of whether you think you're the majority or not. It's gonzo. It doesn't exist. 60-70% intermarriage rate does not lie. So I don't care what philosophical standpoint you're coming from. Either it works or it doesn't. So you say, well, that's your fanatical side coming out. Could be. But I have to be very practical. I happen to like statistics. You can play with statistics. I happen to like statistics. Because statistics certainly can show a lot. Illiteracy, meaning Jewish illiteracy, Not knowing the language, not knowing how to learn texts, is a recipe for disaster. Right? So at the end of the day, let's get really concrete. Show where it doesn't work. Show where the Torah is not true. Bring the evidence and let's evaluate. But you see, most people won't even get up to bat. And the reason they're not going to get up to bat is very simple. Because what happens if you prove them wrong? Then either one or two things happen. Either you just ripped apart their philosophy, and now they see the truth, and now they have to do something to change. Or they can just look at the information and say, I'm still not changing. Doesn't matter, you prove it, you don't prove it. I'm going to do what I want to do. It has nothing to do with philosophy. It has nothing to do with proof or not. It has to do with what I want to do. I think, okay, that's not Judaism anymore. Right? Because you look through the text, you go from the beginning, the beginning of Genesis to the end of Deuteronomy, and it shows clear what God wants. There's different ways to get there. Not everyone has to be exactly the same, but it has to be within certain parameters. If you're outside those parameters, that's not Torah. Now again, this is what the Torah says. This is not, this is not something, the Orthodox are just making up. Either it's authentic or it's not. But again, how many people are going to get in a room to discuss it? Most people are not going to be interested. Because, A, they don't want to maybe be proven wrong. And B, if they are proven wrong, they don't want to change. And if they don't want to change, they're not going to do it. If someone told me they want to get a whole bunch of, Christians together, show them great information why they're wrong. But if the people aren't willing to listen and still hold by whatever they hold by, it's a waste of time. You can show them historical inaccuracies. You can show them mistakes in the text, how they mistranslate. There are a lot of things you can show them. Either they want to be able to see it, and they want to be open-minded enough, or not. And if they're not open-minded enough, it's it. They're not going to be interested. They won't be interested in any which way. So, these people who I think and are being wiped off the face of the map spiritually, what's going to save them? What's going to bring them back? So, I'm a big pessimist. And basically, either they have to be searching for truth, or something major has to happen in a negative way that'll make them think. It's either one of those two scenarios. Because if someone is steeped in desire, the Chovos Levavos says, he brings down in duties of the heart, he says, person who's steeped in society can't think philosophically. Right? If he's steeped in desire. How can he think philosophically? That doesn't even, how to serve God, when to serve Him, how to do it, all these different things, going to be totally irrelevant because that person is just steeped in desire. So unfortunately, we're our own worst enemy. Most Jews today are living in a cloud, in a fog about what Judaism is. Not that they've looked into it, not that they philosophized about it, read books about it. They have their ideas. But what are their ideas based on? And so again, people say, just leave us alone. You make these videos, all you do is bash people. Right? It's extremely painful to see the vast majority of Jews throw their priceless heritage in the garbage. Right? It's extremely painful to see. But again, we make our own decisions. But the decisions we make, I'll ask you the following question. The decisions we make, what are they based on? See, by us, by the Orthodox, what do we believe? We believe beyond the shadow of a doubt the Torah is true. God spoke, Moshe wrote it down, and that's it. But what's our belief based on? First, the Ten Commandments, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am the Lord your God. How do I know? Because he took me out of Egypt. God intervenes in history. It's not a belief. It's not a leap of faith. And we all know that God took us out of Egypt. Right? How do we know? Because we have Passover Seder. Passover Seder is proof. Right? We recall the exodus from Egypt. I mean, obviously the exodus didn't happen, then what are we doing? Right? But, we certainly believe it happened. So there's a lot of proof. There's a lot of proof out there. Historically, sociologically. And bli neder, without a vow here, I am going to make videos. Or audios. Or both, we'll see. Showing that the Torah is true. Showing that it's not just a leap of faith. Right? Hopefully I'm going to put that on my website. I have this subscription website that I think it's a great thing. Going through Jewish history, Jewish philosophy, etc. But these are for people that think, that want to know how to overcome bad character traits, want to know the answers to difficult questions, but how to survive in a topsy-turvy world. How to have proper faith in God when things are tough. How the righteous suffer and what that means. These are questions people want to hear. Want to hear real answers. Right? Sometimes the question's better than the answer. But make no mistake, there are answers. In Chovos Levavos, the Rabbeinu Bachai there says that it's imperative to know God is unique and that God runs the world. It's imperative to think about these things, to live it, to put it into action. That's why he wrote the book. Because a lot of it comes from the heart. Love of God, fear of God, emunah, belief in God, and how we should serve Him. Isn't that something crucial for our lives? Isn't it something that every waking Jew or non-Jew wants to be a Jew, or even a non-Jew should know? Tune in every Tuesday night, 9 o'clock, Duties of the Heart. It's mind-boggling. That's why a lot of what I do is philosophically based in Jewish law also. But most people don't have the basics of what we do, why God created the world, what our purpose is. That's why I gave 1.5 years classes on Derech Hashem, the way of God, but why God created the world, the purpose of man, reincarnation, spiritual forces. So at some point I'm going to package that together, right? A number of classes, 3, 4, 5 classes, one shot. Reincarnation, spiritual world, purpose of man, man before and after the sin. I'm going to try and organize that as well. Got a lot on my plate here. But remember, I'll go over this over and over and over again to show there's so much more behind the Torah. And there's so much for us to understand how things work. Because make no mistake, if we understood how things work, even though we have difficult lives, everybody has difficult lives, it's going to give us purpose and meaning. Because again, either it's true or it's not true. And if it's true, what do I have to do? What are my obligations? whether it's a Jew or a non-Jew. I mean, mind-boggling stuff. Question is, do you want to tap into it or not? So the vast majority of Jews will say, I'm not interested. But it's mind-boggling, could change your life. I don't want to change. I'd rather just do what I do and wing it. But it's a recipe for disaster. Forget about it. I'm not changing. Okay? That person's totally cut off. Basically, their soul is dead. Their heart is hard as a rock. Doesn't mean they can't come back? No. Come back in their own way somehow. But just because they are the majority doesn't mean that the majority is good. Doesn't mean that. Because the majority can do all kinds of things, and they can also ruin Judaism. And if we go according to their majority, Judaism disappears. I want to remind people I just set up a website, $20 a month, going through the ways of the righteous, and going through Jewish history, starting from the Second Temple period. We're going to put up videos there on Jewish law. Going to be a lot of good things up there. Hopefully, belief in God. We're going to work on that. I mean, like I said, got a lot on my plate here and try and get everything done. I also give conversion classes, Noahide classes. Take a look at my Facebook fan page, Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism or Beyond Noahide. Give a class in Duties of the Heart every Tuesday night, 9 o'clock. I give a class on the Path of the Just. That's it's an audio. Anyone who wants it, can get a copy of it. It's not live. I do 2 live question and answer sessions usually during the week. Tuesday, 10 a.m. and Thursday, 2 p.m. New York. Both are New York time. Anyone who wants to come, Jew or non-Jew, come and ask your questions. And also do Tanakh Talk, usually every Sunday, 4 o'clock Central Time. And we're speaking about all kinds of controversial issues. As one of my students once said, if you want to be ticked off by certain videos, these are the ones that you should watch. And anyone who wants to contact me, you can contact me at rabbichaimkoffen@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wishing everyone a great Shabbos.